Hey guys, I'm Tom the Tech Chap, and I want to find out which of these flagship phones lasts the longest. Since my last battery test video, I've added the Galaxy S9 Plus, the Sony Xperia XZ2, and the Huawei P20 Pro. Now obviously this isn't all the phones in the world. I would have liked to have a LG V30s and maybe an iPhone 8 Plus in here as well, but it represents many of the most popular flagships. But make sure you do subscribe, as I make these fairly regularly and I always try to add the latest phones. I've matched the brightness of the phones by eye, as the percentage is obviously relative to the screen's maximum brightness, which does vary. But I have put all the settings I've used and links to all of the phones in the description below. And after 1 hour of watching YouTube, the first set of results are in, with the Note 8 having lost the most at 12% and the P20 Pro the least at just 5%. So let's move on to our first game. We've got Modern Combat 5, which is quite graphically intensive, and it should therefore drain the battery lives quite a bit quicker. I also like it because the game still runs, even without any input from me, which means I can go and grab a cup of tea and come back in an hour's time. This made a pretty big dent in the phone's batteries, and the Pixel 2 XL is now in last place, but very closely followed by the Note 8. Now after another hour of Instagram, just leaving it on the homepage, we can see last place is almost tied between the Note 8 and the Pixel 2 XL, with the rest of the phone still pretty similar, between 60 and 64%, but the P20 Pro remains in the lead with 68% of its battery remaining 3 hours in. Moving on to our next game, we've got Tekken. Once again, I'm going to run this for a full hour, and we should see some pretty significant battery drain here, which is exactly what we get. All the phones are now under 50% of their battery, except for the P20 Pro, which is on 55%. But the Pixel 2 XL seems to be extending its lead into last place with just 34% remaining, which is quite surprising. But now let's move on to a camera test, because it's not all about games and social media apps. I'm going to record 30 minutes of 4K video on each phone. Some of the phones do limit it to 10 minutes recording, but I'll just do it 3 times to get an indicator of what shooting half an hour of 4K video will do to the batteries. And the answer is, well, quite a lot. The Note 8 is now in the red zone at 20% remaining. The Pixel 2 XL's got 25, so closely behind. The rest of them are still in their 30s, except, as usual, the P20 Pro still in the 40s. Moving on to our third game, we've got Temple Run 2. It's not quite as graphically intensive as the others, but once again we're going to leave this to run for the full hour. So we're now 5.5 hours into this test, and 2 of the phones are looking very, very precarious. The Note 8's on 9%, Pixel 2 XL on just 7%, which is quite surprising from the Pixel. I thought that would do better. Now for the next test, I was going to play a podcast for an hour using this Castbox app, but I was having a bit of trouble getting it to work on the iPhone 10. It just didn't seem to want to search or download anything, and I didn't want to use a different podcast app because that introduces more variables. So let's skip that and move straight on to Geekbench 4. And straight away there is something clearly wrong with my Pixel 2 XL. The battery's draining quite quick, it's not getting the benchmark results we'd expect. There's something wrong with my Pixel. Hopefully a factory reset will fix that, but perhaps take the Pixel 2's results with a pinch of salt for this test. But the S9 Plus, the XZ2 and the P20 Pro are all performing really, really well. Now let's go back to the start with another hour of YouTube, and I think we're about to see some phones start to fail. And yep, there we are at the exact 6-hour mark. The Pixel 2 has died. That's a real shame, and I expected it to do better, but as I say, there's something clearly not quite right with it given those benchmark test results, so we'll see. But only 9 minutes later, before the Note 8 conks out with all its battery gone. So that's 2 phones down and 5 to go, but 4 are very close, so it's going to be really interesting to see which goes next. So at the 6-hour 30 mark, 4 of the 5 phones are in the red, but let's jump straight into Modern Combat 5 again for another hour of gaming, and this is definitely going to see some more phones off. 18 minutes later, that is it for the iPhone 10 at 6 hours and 48. Closely followed by the OnePlus 5T at 7 hours and 1 minute, 13 minutes behind the iPhone 10. Now we're down to just 3 phones. 2 of them are in the single digits, the P20 Pro still doing well with 14% remaining. But it's at the 7 hour and 6 mark that we lose the Sony Xperia XZ2, which is very, very impressive. I have to say, I didn't expect such a good result from the Sony. That is really good to see. But just 5 minutes later, that is it for the Galaxy S9 Plus at 7 hours and 11 minutes, which means, and not completely surprisingly given the fact that it has the biggest battery, the Huawei P20 Pro is the winner. But rather than calling it there, let's see how long it actually lasts. It's managed to get through the full hour of Modern Combat 5 and is just clinging on with 3% left. So let's move on to Instagram for another hour, see how far we get. and it doesn't take long, just 4 minutes into Instagram and it's dead. It's 7 hours and 34, a full 1 hour and 34 minutes longer than the Pixel 2 XL, which died first, although under slightly mysterious circumstances. But like the Huawei Mate 10 Pro from my previous video, Huawei has once again won my battery drain test challenge. If you're a fan of Huawei or not, the fact that they cram in such a big battery into a phone that's the same size and just as good looking as the other ones, and offers such a long battery life, well, it's really impressive. But there we have it. Out of those phones, if you want the one with the best battery, go for the Huawei P20 Pro. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. Do click that like and subscribe button below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat.